So today we have a nice special discussion lined up for you highlighting USI. So Vinny LaRocca, our Senior Director of Solutions Engineering here at Lydonia, will be joining us to speak with Andrea Simpson, IT Manager of RPA at USI. And together they'll dig into the nuts and bolts of USI's hyperautomation strategy and the incredible success they've achieved.
Before we get too deep, I just kind of want to level set and go through what IDP is and how it works. So I like this little graphic because it kind of displays some of what's happening behind the scenes that you don't normally get to see. And I'll usually work from left to right. So typically we would start with RPA, and the RPA piece is going to go out and gather whatever documents that we need. So that could be from a web portal, we could be going out to email or some sort of database system. Wherever it lives, we can go grab it and then feed it into the IDP solution. The next step is we're going to digitize it. So especially for documents that might be scanned in, right? We need to use some OCR to make sure that it's in a machine readable format. Once we've gotten to that step, we go to the extraction piece. And so what we're doing there is some pattern recognition across, a variety of documents that we've trained the model on. And it's able to not only extract information from those documents that we've pointed it to, but it knows what it doesn't know as well. So if it gets to this point and it's seen maybe a document that's very different from what it's seen in the past, or it's, a new variation of a document that's just not close enough related to the existing training model, we can throw it up to a human in the loop piece of the platform. And so we can actually have a person sort of triage that manually. And so they can go in, they can correct it or verify that the model was correct. And then when they do that, it gets retrained into the machine learning model. The machine learning model now gets another pattern that it can kind of reference, and it just gets better over time. And then the last step is we take that document, we export it into whatever system we might have. In the case of like invoice processing, maybe we're doing two-way, three-way matching with it, so we need to reach out to an ERP system. But whether it's a system, an email, spreadsheet, doesn't matter. RPA can put it wherever we need to. So, Andrew, I guess first question: how long have you been with USI Services?
Yeah, I've been with USI for 6 years officially. Came through an acquisition, and so I've been fairly similar role at the prior organization, but 6 years so far at USI.
So you were doing RPA related stuff prior?
We were starting on the early iterations of RPA. It wasn't very far along at that point, so we were just starting to look into that at the prior role.
And how'd you get started in that originally?
Like many people, kind of fell into it. I had worked as a business systems consultant and had some knowledge of the processes and could speak both the business speak of this is what we need automated and the technology side of these are the capabilities. So I was brought in to kind of be the middleman in between the business and technology on that. And as that grew, I learned more about RPA and different technologies and capabilities, and we started to build that up at the prior role. And then when I came over to USI, we first started looking at RPA. Our CIO knew my prior history was some of the early work on it, so he brought me in and said, okay, we need you to start leading this so we can figure out our RPA strategy. And originally did it just as part of my role, and as we've grown a whole team at USI, from myself and our primary developer each doing it part-time to now we have a team of 7 or 8 folks that do nothing but this. So we've grown exponentially over the last 4 years.
And with those 8 or so people you have on your team, how many automations do you have running?
We have, I think, close to 20 automations running currently in production, and then a large number in various development phases.
Cool. And so I guess the next question would be why, or how did USI get started in the RPA journey?
Yeah, so our CIO and board were looking at innovation opportunities, and one of the buzzwords several years ago was RPA, and so they said, well, let's figure out a little bit more about this. Our CIO had worked with the CEO of Lydonia in the past, Kevin, and they had a good working relationship, so they partnered up to do just a proof of concept and came to me and said, okay, let's figure out where we can make this work within USI and really start to gain some value.
Cool. And what problem originally were we trying to solve for?
Yeah, so originally it was a combination of we really want to just try the technology and see where we can make it apply and help. Specifically, when I started looking at what areas can we really automate to make a big impact, I knew one of those would be our direct bill processing system. Process, because we had tried it at the prior company, had a little bit of success, but the technology wasn't there yet to really automate the direct bill process. So we came back, tried it again with the newer technology. First, just straight RPA, and then adding in IDP to really make the process efficient. So we were trying to gain efficiencies, trim some of our costs there, and then also just start the process of seeing how can we apply IDP. And it was a great use case for, we come across with tons, millions of PDFs throughout our organization every year. And this is just our first use case of, can we really make IDP work? And we proved we could.
Awesome. And when you guys were originally looking for a partner, was there anything specific you were looking for? And I guess why Lydonia?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally we were looking for a partner who could, one, provide the expertise and knowledge, because we were just starting out and didn't have that internally. So we needed someone who could provide the knowledge, guide us along the way, help us build up our program. We've built a fairly significant center of automation, and we were able to partner with Lydonia to do a large part of that. We've actually tried a few other vendors, and we didn't find the quality or really the consultation and support that we needed that we found with Lydonia. Everything from training, getting consultations when we just can't make our solution design work the way we think it should. We've always found Lydonia willing to jump in and say, hey, help us figure that out. They'll jump in, help us figure out our solution design, and partner well with us. We've had a great experience with that. So the original goal was just to find a partner that would work, and you guys have proven yourself over that time.
Glad to hear it. So I guess other than direct bill, is there anything else you guys are automating with IDP?
Yeah, we actually have also rolled out our lockbox process, and that's really taking, just like a bank's lockbox was, we take all of our checks that we get in the mail each day, those get scanned in, and we use IDP to classify, and we used an out-of-the-box model for checks to extract the info we need from our checks, and then output a document that can be loaded into our banking softwares to actually deposit our checks and start our process further along. Bank lock boxes, if for anyone who's ever worked with one, are extremely expensive and not very efficient. But we've basically created our own lockbox using IDP, and it's a massive time savings. We had a fairly significant return on investment for that, and all without having to go to a bank and get a lockbox set up.
And so in the future, is there any other IDP processes that you're looking at, or I guess just general RPA or automation candidates that you think are worth talking about?
Oh, absolutely. We have multiple things on the horizon for IDP. Insurance as an industry is very heavily PDF driven, and so we have many other projects in the works to extract data from PDFs, everything from quotes, policy documents, everything that you can get in a PDF, we do get in a PDF, and it's very difficult and manual to extract data from those. So we do have multiple efforts across the company to extract data from PDF, along with starting to look towards bringing in the Gen AI piece to it. I know UiPath has some technology that's not general yet, but it will be very near future be GA, where you can actually train your models with some Gen AI and will greatly reduce your training time on those models. So we're looking forward to implementing some of that into our IDP. That way we can get value even faster.
Yeah, and so you're talking about when you're training, actually having it do some of the labeling for you?
Absolutely, yes.
Are you guys looking at large language models or Gen AI to use in production at all for like maybe unstructured type documents or things of that nature?
We plan to look at that more in 2024, but we don't have, apart from some other initiatives that we're doing internally, we don't have a massive demand for that yet.
Okay. But yeah, so looking into it, but nothing quite there yet.
Yep.
So that was all the questions I had for you, Andrea, unless there's anything else that you want to add to what we've gone through.
Yeah, I will say some of the other things we are looking towards in the very near future and starting up is the task mining with UiPath and communications mining. We do see a lot of benefit across our organization with using some of the task and process mining to find the best places and use cases for our automations. So that's something we're looking to stand up this year. As well as the communications mining, because there's some great potential to not only replace some things that we're doing today, but get that we have a lot of shared mailboxes, and to kind of streamline and triage, do some different work on our communications mining as well. So those are big opportunities that we're going to be capitalizing on early in this year.
And what do you hope to get out of the task mining stuff? It's another, AI tool by UiPath. Are you trying to find automation ideas? Are you trying to reduce the amount of time that you're, doing sort of business analyst work there? Is it all the above?
All of the above. Primarily, a large portion of our staff, our USI employees, a large portion of those are account representatives that work with our clients. So our major focus on task mining is to alleviate time off of their day. A lot of the automations we've done thus far is helping smaller groups and back office. So things like accounting, where, it may impact 70, 80 people, but that's all. If we look towards alleviating even 30 minutes an hour per day for our account reps, that number in the thousands, you're talking massive efficiency gains. And those are the most overworked people probably, because they're the ones actually dealing with our clients and making sure that our clients' needs are taken care of. So our big push will be to try and help them in the best way we can. In addition to potentially doing some citizen developer this year, we have a lot of folks who could have some citizen development going with them within the organization that may find some efficiencies that we wouldn't necessarily want our developers spending their time on.
Cool. Do you have any citizen development today, or is that's something you're going to start soon?
We're going to start soon. We have a plan in the works to start that this year, and have some folks identified who've started doing some of the UiPath training on UiPath Academy. So we're going to implement some of that. And then, as always, we're leaning on our folks at Lydonia to help us get some of those things stood up and in place.
Awesome. So yeah, Liz, I think we can probably turn it over to Q&A.
Yes, awesome. We've got quite a few questions that have been coming in. So Andrea, you just mentioned communications mining. There's a question, what is communications mining for those that don't know?
Absolutely. So communications mining is a new solution, I guess you would call it, from UiPath. It actually allows the tool to read through the emails, if that's the communication you want to use, It will do some sentiment analysis and then can actually kick off RPA. So if, for example, you had a client email in and say, hey, I need a certificate of insurance, then the communications mining can kick off that process. Similarly, if you have a upset client, it can read the sentiment of their words and know to escalate that email to the top and make sure it's taken care of quickly. So that's kind of the communications mining is not only starting workflows, but also using sentiment to read responses and appropriately filter them through.
That's pretty cool. From a marketing perspective, I would love that, just to kind of get feedback in real time from our customers. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, another question here. Vinny or Andrea, can you please shed some light on some of the AMS systems that you have done automation around? I use Applied Epic and was curious if that mattered in terms of automation potential.
I can absolutely answer some here, and Vinny, you can add to it if you want. We have automated around the Sajita agency management system. We've worked with AIM, a lot of Vertafore products for us, so it's AIM, Sajita, Benefit Point, and ImageRight with those. So a lot of ours are around the Vertafore products. I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of folks using Applied Epic and the RPA automations, but Vinny, anything else on there you can think of?
Yeah, I think we've done the Applied Epic, stuff too. It's similar enough where it's virtually the same story.
Cool. All right. So you mentioned generative AI, which is a big buzz topic right now anywhere you go in the world. We have had several questions about it. So what is your plan with generative AI, Gen AI, and what are some of the use cases and how do you plan to use that?
Our first focus will really be on helping train our documents. It takes a while to actually label your documents when you're training. You get a big value off of it, but if we could speed that up by using some of the Gen AI technologies, that's a big focus. One of the other use cases that we're finding is we can extract data from policies, but interpreting some of that is a lot more difficult. We've worked with extracting some pieces of data around certain clauses within our policies, but that doesn't tell us, is this included or how is it included, which level is it included? So we are looking to use some generative AI to make sure that when we're extracting the data, we can then interpret it correctly to get the full value out of extracting the data. I know our reporting and data science team probably have 1,000 other use cases, but that's the ones that I know of for my side of the world, at least.
Right. Seems like there's a use case for anything, really, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's also a bunch of questions around IDP. I mean, I know I can say just from our experience, from Lydonia, 2/3 of our customers are running IDP and having great success with it. And so I'm fascinated by the technology myself, but so are other people because there's quite a few questions here. Is USI looking to implement IDP and automation for the client-facing side to improve customer experience? For example, is USI looking to automate the application submission and/or renewal process?
At this time, we're not looking for that. We have a lot of different processes going on, but we're focusing on backside at the moment to gain efficiency, but also to make sure we have a stable environment that can scale appropriately. I do think that's in our future, is eventually we may look towards client facing, but right now we're primarily just focused on internal.
Right. And to build on that, for your internal processes that you are using IDP on, how do you monitor and measure those IDP processes?
So right now, We do not have Insights up and running because we're just now moving to the cloud. Highly recommend the cloud if you are just implementing. But there is Insights through UiPath to monitor. You have reporting, but primarily everything we need right now is an orchestrator for UiPath, so we can see, our statistics. We can see the information we need to make sure that we're running appropriately, our timing. And then, of course, within all of our RPA we build, we make sure we're building in exception handling throughout the process. So we can see all of those things. Once we implement Insights, I think we can even further have views and dashboards of really, how it's running, the time it's saving, the money it's saving, all of those pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, and so actually that tees up nicely for the next question. So how long would it have, we've talked about some of the great ROI you've experienced. How long has it taken to realize some of that success in ROI?
It's fairly quickly. Most of our projects have to go through, before we even start, a business case and ROI evaluation before we actually start the project too far. Our direct bill processing one that we did, the ROI on that one is great enough to pay for all of our licensing and everything for the entire year. Like it was a massive gain there. So that one alone really was a huge ROI. Things like we found ROI on ones that we didn't even expect. The lockbox one I mentioned, we expected our ROI to be primarily driven around reducing overtime, and staffing was going to stay the same, but we were going to make it where they weren't having to work overtime on days when the mail was late or anything like that. And we did have quite a bit of overtime going on with that department. Not only were we able to reduce that overtime back to normal hours for the most part, we had an employee leave unexpectedly, and the team said, we really don't even need to replace them. So we went through attrition, but we actually were able to save a position on that team. And that was unexpected because the whole project for Lockbox, I just had an idea for. I talked with our Lydonia rep, Chuck, and he said, "Oh yeah, we can look at that." We used some Lydonia resources and had that automated within weeks. Didn't even plan to do it this year, so that one was a really, really quick ROI on that one. And even with the resources we use, it's like a license. We don't even use a full license on it. And AI units is really low. It's like a tiny fraction of our AI units. So that one was a really quick ROI to get.
That's really cool. That must be really satisfying for you.
It is.
See the results. Yeah, sure. Awesome. All right, another question. Do you utilize an automation COE? If so, how has that helped?
So we've built our own center of excellence. We call it our center of automation. We actually used a little bit of a blueprint from UiPath to kind of get started, but we've built up a center of automation internally using a variety of internal tools to really make sure that our stakeholders have visibility into the process and can get all the help they need and support they need. We've built in processes. Some templates we've used from UiPath, some we've built ourselves, but we've really spent the last 3 years trying to focus on having a really strong center of automation so that our team can quickly move through projects and don't fall into some of the mistakes we made early in the process, which I think everyone starts out with a few mistakes there, here and there.
Yeah. Awesome. This is a great question. What advice would you give to other insurance companies just getting going and considering adopting RPA and IDP technologies? Any specific lessons learned or other best practices that you want to share?
Absolutely. I've talked with a lot of folks on this, and my number one is start slow. There's no need to rush to do everything at once. I think the adage around how do you eat an elephant is the best one, like one bite at a time. pick one automation that's straightforward. You don't want a complex one to start with. You want a one straightforward, build it and learn from there, and then slowly up your complexity and your volume from there. Talk to others in your industry that are doing automation. I think everyone's learned little lessons here and there, but unless we all start putting those together, we're all going to stumble over the same things. And then I do recommend working with Lydonia or a vendor that can help you learn your best practices up front. That saves a ton of time. We have mostly junior developers just because RPA hasn't been around that long. There's not that many senior developers around, but our resources that we've found with Lydonia have been able to, every time we run into a hurdle, we can pull them in and they help us through that hurdle, make sure that we're able to solve it and move forward. So don't be afraid to lean on consultations, other resources to help get started, and really just make sure you take time to put processes in place. How are you going to determine if this should be automated? How are you going to determine, are you going to use something like task capture to capture the process and document the process? And factor in support time. There's going to be support needs because you're going to have things where, you set up a process, it's running fine for months, and Microsoft has an update that impacts you, or you're working with a specific application that has an update, or even just systems go down. You need that support. So make sure you build in time and people for support.
Nice. Vinny, this one's directed at Lydonia. So we have costly offshore contracts for mid and back office work with groups like Resource Pro and Patra. Does Lydonia have experience automating these processes to eliminate the need for these companies, meaning Resource Pro?
Yeah, Resource Pro and Patra are not big fans of us. We've eliminated a significant amount of work that they're doing in the U.S. So yeah, that's a really common use case that we'll see people saying like, hey, we're just sending this offshore and they're doing it. The economics work out where we can do it a lot more cost effectively onshore with these tools we're talking about.
And if I can say just one quick thing on that too, is don't forget that you don't always need to eliminate it. Also realigning. We found that working the human in the loop, you still have to have someone do human in the loop a lot of times for IDP, and why not have an offshore resource do that? So sometimes you don't have to eliminate, you can reduce or change the focus a little bit, and it's pretty efficient that way.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting use case. Pretty straightforward. Seems like it's a no-brainer. When do you run these processes, Andrea? Do they run 24 hours a day? Are they scheduled? Do they run on demand?
We have a little bit of everything. We don't run 24 hours a day just because right now we reset our desktops every night. But I think we have around 21 hours a day we can run. Most of our things are scheduled, and we're pretty much all unattended usage because why not? So we do a lot of scheduled. A lot of our IDP starts with a document or something being fed by a person. So we actually just have them feed those into a queue, and a queue picks up and takes off with the item. And then we have a lot of reporting automated. That's all just done on a timer. So we have a little bit of everything there. And then we do have, I think, one or two attended that we do, but that's once a month something needs to kick off, and it changes every month when it needs to be. So we have someone kick off that process.
Cool. Vinny, how do these technologies manage errors and maintain quality control? There was also a question in here too that I might lump together. Are there any issues around privacy and confidentiality with sensitive insurance data?
Yeah, so the second part, there's no persistent data that goes on in Orchestrator. So, if there's human in the loop or something, that'll get parked until it's taken care of, and then all the data is forgotten. So nothing's getting saved or sent anywhere or trained into models other than your own, model that you have. And what was the first part to that question?
How does it handle error? Excuse me. Processing, managing errors, and maintaining quality control.
Yeah, so we can set up, a variety of business rules that, when we engage with a customer, we would go through a business analyst stage where we would define what all of that looks like and make sure that we're adhering to it, whether that's SLAs or specific things that we need to make sure are happening. I think the more important piece of that question is the way that the machine learning models work. They always have a confidence threshold associated with it. And I mentioned when I went through that slide earlier that they know what they know and they know what they don't know. And that's a really, really important piece to this type of technology, because we need to be able to see if it pulls something. If it is not confident about what it's seen, I want to loop in a person to ensure that that information is correct. I don't want errors propagated all throughout my systems because it's just doing whatever it wants all day, right? So there's some oversight by a person that happens there. And again, when that oversight happens and those corrections are made or changes are made or just verification, that then gets trained back into the model and the model gets better over time.
Okay. Great. And actually, another question about our experience with Patra and Resource Pro. So, what are the processes? I guess, Andrea, what are the processes that you've taken from Patra and or Resource Pro?
So for us, we actually haven't taken any completely away. Our primary one that we work with Patra on is direct bill. And like I said, we just refocus them and have them doing the human in the loop piece of it, because there's a part of it where you have to not only work with the Action Center, but do a step in our systems to connect some data that the tools can't do, because it's very subjective, human driven. So we have them do that portion. So essentially, instead of completely automating our direct bill processing 100%, we've automated about 80% of it, which saves us a ton of time, but allows our Patra resources to now, rather than manually typing in all of our direct bill statements, they're able to associate things in the system and work with the Action Center to really do that human in the loop piece. So it's really about redirecting the resources with Patra. Most of our other processes with Patra we have not automated at this point.
Yeah, some other examples of things we've done in the past that were either, Patra, Resource Pro, off the top of my head, certificates of insurance was one, account management is another one, policy reviews, things like that. In a lot of cases, we are eliminating it completely. In some cases, like Andrea mentioned, we may keep them around to do some of the human in the loop. And actually, one other thing I wanted to touch on, the sort of subjective pieces to automation. We used to say, if you need a person to kind of look over this and make a decision that they know when they look at it, there's really no rule that I can define. If this happens, I do this, X, Y, Z. Then we probably wouldn't automate that. We would have it go up to human in the loop. We'd have a person make a decision and we move on. And I think what we're seeing with generative AI and large language models is that at least a large portion of what we were talking about, as little as 6 months ago, we're now, approaching with the mindset of Gen AI, LLM, we can probably automate all of this.
Cool. All right, we'll wrap up soon, but there's some questions here. Everyone's really interested in this. So, Andrea, how was IT involved in this whole process?
Yeah, so we have a development team, which is, of course, IT, but for the most part, we rely on IT heavily around our infrastructure for initial setup. We work off of VDI, so they have to help us get our VDI set up and help us, with some of that initial stuff. But for the most part, we're an entity of our own. We have our project management team and our development teams all together as a team for UiPath team. And really, other than relying on them for our VDIs, we don't have a ton of IT involvement since we're kind of our standalone. I will say, though, a lot of IT involvement around them wanting things automated for them. IT has a lot of also processes that can be automated. And then we do have a lot of other IT groups that want to be citizen developers because they obviously have that tech savviness that they can do a lot of that, even if they don't know coding. And so there are potentially going to be some of our citizen developers because they can automate some of the things that, our IT is overloaded on, and it's can be handled via automation. So we are looking to have potential there with IT. But like I said, we don't have a ton of IT involvement since we're kind of our standalone. One of the folks on our team does a lot of the infrastructure heavy setup. Excuse me. So we don't need a whole lot of extra support other than the VDIs.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. A lot of our clients kind of keep it standalone, but it's really cool that your IT sees the value and now they're wanting to get on board. So to that end, I actually had another question that ladders nicely here. So now you've talked about citizen development and the great success that you've had with your existing programs and your future plans. Now, us outside of IT, are there other people bubbling up with ideas for impactful automations? They're wanting to get on board, potentially be citizen developers?
We don't have as many interested in citizen development because they don't know it's a thing yet, thankfully. But we do see a lot of ideas bubbling up. The more we do, the more ideas. Like for every one automation we do, 5 or 6 more ideas spawn. One example of that is I mentioned that we did some automation with the AMS AIM. So AIM is one of our specialty groups, uses that. We did a very simple automation. They had to remember every day to go in and post their invoices. It's a very quick thing, but you have to remember to do it at a certain time and make sure no one's on PTO so someone can cover it. So we just did a quick RPA that just runs every day and posts those invoices. As soon as they saw how that was working, they came up with a list of 5 or 6 other potential automations they'd like us to build. And we see that with every group. One group actually does want to do some citizen development. We were able to do some automation with our Sajida team that does conversions. We have a lot of acquisitions that we do. Those acquisitions have to move from their agency management system into ours eventually. So we have a lot of work around conversions to get people into those systems. And our conversions team spends hours after every conversion running reports to make sure that everything converted appropriately. So we just automated a whole series of reports for them. So once a conversion's complete, it kicks off, runs all the reports, sends them at the end. So rather than sitting at the computer waiting on those reports to run, usually they would spend the entire day just sitting there waiting on reports to run and run the next one, waiting on the report, then run the next one. Now they just get notified at the end of the day, hey, your reports have been run, go check it out, make sure they're correct, and then sign off on the conversion. So ton of time saved there. Once that team saw that, they said, we have a ton of other stuff related to these type of things, especially smaller ones, that we're fairly confident we could do the development on, especially because they change a little bit each conversion. There's a little bit different you have to do for each one. So they're actually first on our list for citizen developer and have been taking some of the UiPath Academy courses.
Awesome. All right. One question is, how much happier is your accounting team?
Our accounting team loves us. They also come to us with a giant list of automation opportunities. They're very happy because, one, we're reducing overtime. So instead of staying until sometimes 7 or 8, if it's a late mail day, they're able to go home on time for that group. A lot of the other groups are also thrilled because we do a lot of financial reporting for them, and it's very boring to kick off a report, wait, kick off the next report. So they love the fact that they can get their work done in a day with a lot less stress around running reports.
Right. All right. Well, this was awesome. Andrea, thank you so much. It's really inspiring to see what you guys have done. And, like I said, we talk about what good looks like for automation, and USI is in that conversation every time. So thank you again for your business and your partnership. And for everyone else, thank you for joining. We'll follow up with the recording of this, as well as some more information about IDP and how we approach hyperautomation and IDP at Lydonia. So thank you, everyone. Vinny and Andrea, thanks so much. Have a great day.